I recently reviewed a lookbook that a stylist had put together for me recently. And while I was looking at it, I knew immediately that aside from a basic undergarment she recommended, like so the straps don't show, I would never order a single item from it. And I was disappointed. I mean, first of all, the whole idea of like meeting with a personal stylist feels very, I don't know, like, oh my gosh, she's going to solve all my wardrobe issues. It's going to be amazing. Like, she'll shop for me and she's done this. She put it together, she put together something that spoke to energy and vibrancy and striking colors, but they weren't a style that highlighted me. And I hate to sound vain when I say that, but I think this is really important for you two to understand. You know, I would be wearing clothes that drew attention to the clothes. So if you've ever experienced the difference between wearing an outfit that it leaves you pulling, on this or that, or you garnered compliments like, I love that top. I love that color. And then other times you've worn something that made people say, you look amazing. You're glowing. Or maybe they didn't say anything at all, but you were just like attracting people to you and your energy. You were at this natural, just high energy, feeling good place. That is the difference between being in a fun color, like bright pink at the beach, right? And being in your color. And one is short-lived and it's just fun to look at. And one is magnetic for you, but might not be for somebody else. And that is exactly the way you will feel when you find your voice. It's not hard to do, say, a quick story on social media or a short on YouTube or a video of any kind. It's easy to give a podcast interview or to do a media appearance. You don't have to get nervous before you do it. And of course, we all want to prepare, but you already are you. You already know it. And it's just easy to be in your own skin and comfortable. Here's the message for today's podcast. If you don't define your brand, somebody else will. They already are. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to She Means Fitness Business. It's a division of my business's Voice for Fitness. And at Voice for Fitness, our entire team believes that you want to be an inspirational example yourself to other midlife women. To do that, you need a profitable health and fitness coaching business. And the problem usually is a lack of clients or, girl, you're charging too little. And that'll make you feel uncertain about whether you can really succeed, whether you can really make a business out of this, or wonder, am I going the right direction, on the right path? Do I keep doing this or do I need to change something? Look, I believe you deserve consistent, dependable revenue from clients you love. And now today, unlike when I started in 1984, you can absolutely have it. And I understand how you feel because I've been there not all that long ago when I started over. And it's why I train fitness pros internationally, and I have for 25 years. So before you, though, jump into a call with me where we look at the 3 steps of getting more clients, making sure you have more profit, and keeping your freedom of time so you can enjoy it, I want you to go and get the business scorecard. I designed it for health and fitness pros so that you can read it, and in less than 2 minutes, you can identify where your holes are, where do you need to focus your time so that you close those holes and those gaps. You could start gaining 5,000 more a month easily within the first 90 days, and all of our coaching clients do. If you're way over that, 5,000 seems like a drop in the bucket. Congratulations to you. but you could easily grow 25% your entire business profit margin by the end of the year if you're doing the right things. So let's dive back into this. It's all about defining and developing your voice. So you got to define it first. I think you'll agree before you start developing it, because we've all been there where you start doing things, but we're running 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction. This is not good. Okay. In this episode, I'm going to share a fundamental of distinguishing yourself from others. And this is how you stand out instead of blending in. It's how you overcome the hurdle that one recent trainer said to me. There are so many of us. Like, how do we get more clients? But that shouldn't be a problem. That should be evidence there's demand, right? And the more people talking about training and working with health coaches, the more we make it feel like it's mainstream, like everybody's doing it, and customers will be more willing to spend. But listen, spoiler alert, there's only one you. When you define your brand so that you know it, that's when others will recognize it too, and not until. Working for years in gyms and university clinics, what I know and used to tell fitness instructors, trainers, gym owners that I trained is that your brand is what they say about you behind your back, in the locker room, after the class, after the session. It may not be the one you want, but that is definitely your current brand. Is there anything that you want said? What is being said? Do you know it? If you asked 15 people, and if you think I don't have 15 people, ask five. Ask 5 people who follow you. How would you describe my brand? What would they say? Do you know? And listen, don't ask your best friend. Don't ask your mom. Don't ask your sister. Ask somebody who's following you. How would you describe me if you were describing me to a friend? All right. If I think of some of the influencers that I watch on social, here's how I would briefly describe them to somebody else. And I'm not including their names here. You actually, if you are following anybody I'm following, you may already know. So I would think of one as it's that beautiful, sexy midlife woman from Mexico, definitely using her body to show herself in revealing poses that display strength and a lot of skin to promote and to draw attention. Behind the scenes, independent, I would say she's a little aloof. You never actually see her educating, talking. She's never on a video. Education, I don't think, is a strong suit. She's got an opinion and she likes to be maybe on a pedestal more away from her clientele. And she likes that influencer status. I never see her collaborating with others, actually. Okay, next. It's that exerciser turned fitness influencer trainer who shoots a lot of video in her car. Like if I see a video of somebody sitting in their car talking, I'm like, oh, is it her? And she relates to women in midlife really well. She portrays a real how I did this, how to do this approach. Another one, the retired high school counselor turned fitness coach who's got a bit of a Jersey accent. She's pretty straightforward. She's sharing the same message consistently, even on repeat. So even though you follow her and I've seen that post before, that keeps coming up over and over again, but unapologetically. Who do you follow and how do you describe their brand voice? Because you're describing their brand, even though it's not the one they've consciously necessarily chosen. So other that I follow, and probably you do too, Dr. Mark Hyman, to mention a name. He's always health related. It's always a health related message. Right now, much more about fitness and longevity, revealing what are the basics, but not basics to all people, serving as reminders and not offensive, but definitely firm is how I would describe his voice. Chalene Johnson, right? I would say she's a whistleblower. Like she's sharing her personal dream or journey with some real medical issues. and making it real for other women in midlife going through other similar things in several different unique areas. But she's kind of using her platform built on a fitness platform and then later on a maybe a social media and fitness business platform to really go much broader. Betty Rocker, she's always been more, than anything, an advocate for her followers. She's clear about not being their hero, not motivating them, but about having them be their own hero and their own inspiration. She gives them the tools to value themselves. I mean, that really is a standout for her. Dave Asprey of Bulletproof Coffee, first, other brands since. He's the founder. He's a biohacker and he has been, he always will be. He calls BS on health practices that are harmful, that, we all like kneel down to kale, and he calls BS on the fact that it's actually an anti-nutrient. He's not afraid to swim upstream. When everybody is saying this, he's not including that in his smoothies or suggesting it. He looks at practices that are harmful, new practices that are not yet mainstream and adopted by very many. He is not looking to be handsome or sexy or in style. He's just plain old who he is, sharing why he's doing things and how you too can improve your health and not fall for tricks leading to worse health, right? So some very standouts. Can you think of others like Food Babe? Like, what's her brand? You know what she does and always does. Ben Greenfield, clearly defined brand voices. What you're after is defining yours. You can hear brand voices as you listen to the radio, commercials for cars and ice cream. There are two of which have me changing the station faster than you can imagine. They have a clear brand voice for a reason. They want to be remembered. And, like the car salesman, you go to that car salesman and you know that they are ready to do business. You're going to get a deal and probably you're going to walk up that lot with a car. You're not going to go and, look for weeks, in and out of the lot. This is not where you go for your luxury drive. You want, so you want to have something special when the grandkids are coming over. You may want to reach when you go into the freezer section of the grocery store for the brand of ice cream that made you think of the warm, fuzzy family memories. Now, I don't know about you, but I have to admit this. The music comes on and it makes it sound like you're actually starting to listen to like easy listening 104 music. And then you realize, no, it's a bait and switch. It's an ice cream commercial. Man, I hate that one. I just hate it. But probably it sticks in your mind. Even if you dislike it, you remember it. And they may not care, but I'm sure you do. That's not probably the brand type that you want, but these are also considerations. When you define your brand voice, you have this thumbprint that's yours and yours alone. You may have sound bites to give on social media or in your media appearances, but they're not going to be rehearsed. They're not going to be like you sweat over them. And I don't want to forget that. They're probably natural if you found your brand voice. You may use quotes, but you attribute them, you don't borrow them. You attribute them to somebody else because you're not threatened, because you already have your own voice, right? You don't just become interesting. You actually are interested. You're interested in using your voice to go against anything that you stand against and toward everything you stand for, and that benefits your customers. Where do you use our brand voice? We use it all over. You need it in writing. And so that might be writing. For me, it's writing show notes, for instance. I don't just come on and ramble based on bullet points. You may think I do sometimes. I get it. But I actually get so excited. I'll get ahead of myself and I'll go on a tangent. But I have show notes. I write them almost like a blog. And often I will decide, is this a blog or is this a podcast? And sometimes it's both. So my show notes will read like a blog, but you need it there. You will need it when you're writing emails or someone else's. You will need it when you're writing that freebie or someone else's. So if you're handing this stuff over, you can't hand it over to them and let them write in any voice. You've got to hand them, here's who we are. Here's the language. Here's how I would say something. Like I would never say, dear blah, blah, blah. Or I would never say, hey, like HEY. And I have had some of the developers who've worked for me and start things behind the scenes. They've said, hey, I would say, I'm like, I would never say that. Don't say that. Say hi. And don't say dear, because that's too formal. So I know my voice, and there's only 3 options I gave you there. You might come up with a very different one. But I also, at the signature, I don't say sincerely, or I don't, I say something very specific. I say, see you on the flip side. I say that at the end of videos. I say that at the end of each and every email. I sometimes will say that in freebies, like, in an ebook or an e-guide for a program. See you on the flip side, in the welcome note. So who's your brand? How do you talk? Do you know? Do you speak in full sentences, or do you write like you speak, a little bit more casual, a little bit more informal, and say, no way, that's just not going to work, right? And I make a point of writing the way I speak. And that means that sometimes you have fragments of sentences, and that bothers some grammar and English people. And that's okay, because they're probably not my people. They're going to be driven crazy over the dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Your brand voice will attract your ideal customers, and it will repel anybody who's not. And you do want to do both. You are not here to serve everybody, because you will be miserable even if you were temporarily successful. And any success you do have is going to be short-lived. So you want to make sure am I attracting the people who I love working with and who love working with me? So you'll need to use your brand voice, yes, in writing and speaking. And once you find it, there won't be any mistake about who you are, what you stand for, what you stand against, and every message will be congruent. It doesn't matter if we're talking about writing or speaking. Finding your voice takes some time. You may be 50 and just beginning to develop a brand of your own and still feel like, well, I should know my brand voice by now. But should you? I don't know. You could still be searching for your unique voice. So don't rush it. You're going to keep it for a very long time. Who has a voice that you respect? Reflect on those. I would say Oprah has a very strong voice. We kind of all know if there's a quote, and you might say, who said that? You actually might know if it was an Oprah quote. How about Dolly Parton? Now, you might have not thought of her immediately, but she's got a distinct brand voice. It's a different kind of an authority and credibility than Oprah has, isn't it? She relays her message very differently, much more feminine. She's got a different tone in her voice, and that even is a part of it. And what about Jane Fonda? What about how she's used her voice and her celebrity platform over the years? But she has a definitive voice, a brand voice. Jane Fonda, the brand. Think about each of their messages and also the way they deliver it, and they are uniquely different. They represent different causes, and yet each one of them has a unique appeal. Don't confuse celebrity with voice, because there are a lot of celebrities, some of which really seem to get lost in the crowd, don't necessarily have this standout voice. They may have reached celebrity status in part, though, because of their voice. And that I think you could say about Oprah and Dolly and Jane. They didn't do it by becoming one of the pack. They've had a lot of ups and downs, and yet each maintained the same voice throughout. I mean, how many times has Jane Fonda been married and divorced, right? And she had family problems, right? Yeah, it wasn't all just rainbows and unicorns. And I'm, Henry Fonda's daughter. And so this is so natural. I mean, there are lots of ups and downs in Oprah's life, and we've all followed her weight loss successes and fails. And, that is just part of it, but they haven't lost their voice. That didn't go by the wayside. Having a voice is something you develop, you fine tune, and then you get known for. So, how to and not to develop your brand voice. It's not a topic that creates a brand voice. It's not your niche, like you just saying, my voice is for somebody. Declaring it is not enough. It's what you stand for, what you stand against. It's what you talk about and how, and what you don't talk about. So I want to give you this actionable item. So I'm going to give you some questions. I want you to answer these to define your own brand voice and get started. Once you do, I want you to ask your team members to do the same, and you can have them show you their responses or not. But it would be really beneficial, I think, to have them go through this before you give them yours. I mean, this is what I want. And then for you to all talk about it as a team in how are we portraying this? Is this really playing out in every customer service response that we send? Is this the way you're messaging? Because somebody may be working for you in customer service, but they shouldn't be using their own voice. They should be using the Flipping 50 voice. If it's Becky in our support box, if it's one of our community coaches, Karen, in our Facebook group, she can't be using her voice. She's using the Flipping 50 voice and the coaching methodology that I teach, right? So this is really an important piece of bringing somebody in and onboarding them. They understand the brand. And this might be a really good thing in a very early session, talking about how do you take the time to learn a brand voice, and give me an instance of when you've done that. Great interview question. Find out, what do they know about it? How invested are they in actually coming on board to your business? Not how much do they just want the job and the hourly rate, and the pay. But they actually want what you're doing with the people you're doing it for. Super important. You're not trying to grade these people. So you might just let them live with their own answers and responses, and then let them compare it. And in a meeting, they may decide they're willing to share it and say, wow, I was so far off, or no, I was pretty close. Here's what I had, and here's where you have. And so here's where I think I can learn better, and having them volunteer that as opposed to feel put on the spot, you can kind of turn this around. So here's the questions, or the fill this in the blank. What does your brand stand for? And then in fairness, this will help you. What does your brand stand against? So kind of pigeoning these as polar opposites. What does your brand talk about? And what does your brand never talk about? What tone of voice does your brand use? And what words does your brand use? What are examples of words you'd never use? Like in my case, I would never say dear, or I would never say hey, right? So I would say hi, right? Somebody else, this one also came up, so I'm going to throw this out there. It comes to mind. I will sometimes say, hey, girlfriend. And I try not to use that too much now that I'm a little bit more sensitive to the fact that this is a turnoff for some, because the goal is, if you know something would alienate someone, we don't necessarily have to do that. We do this without being offensive, but I don't know that I mind sending somebody in the wrong direction. Is okay if somebody decides not to follow me. If that little thing would do it, I'm okay with them leaving. Because probably down the road, not too far, we're going to not get along in some other matter as well. So I'd rather not have them. But I've used that, and somebody said, don't call us girls. You would never call a group of men boys. And I'm like, I don't know. I might. I think I would. Like go and play golf with the boys, going away for a boys' weekend. or a guy's weekend, guys, girls. Yeah, I think I would. So it's just a difference of opinion, but also remember, if somebody's really offended by that, that's not necessarily the goal, but I'm not going to stop using terms that are, for me, terms of endearment. Like I would say, girlfriend, look, because I'm speaking to somebody just like I would to a good friend. And I'm not going to just say totally respectfully, Michelle, I have to tell you this. No, I'm going to say, girlfriend, are you nuts? Like, that's my voice. So your brand voice may be very different, but I think this is an instance where I would say this, like, girlfriend or, lady, I would never say. So I would never say, ladies, that's a Flipping 50 would never say that. Somebody else might, but I don't like it. I don't know why, but it doesn't sit well with me, and I'm not going to ponder it for very long. I don't have time to do that. But it's more of a, how do I talk to my girlfriends? What's the same respect I would give to my girlfriends? And be bluntly honest with them so that they get the best, right? The best support, the best feedback from me if they've asked for it. I have to give that to my audience as well. Feel the same exact way. What words you use, what words you never use, and how do you want people who interact with your brand to feel? So in answer to that question, in regard to what we've just discussed, I want them to feel like I'm bluntly honest and direct with them. I'm candid. I am going to tell them the truth. I wrote this in You Still Got It, Girl, I believe, in the introduction of the foreword. And it was, if you're crazy making, I'm not going to get in there with you. I'm not going to get in there and have empathy for you. I'm going to point out the fact that you have this limiting belief. It's your perception. You believe it to be true, but that does not mean it's true. It's just a thought in your head. It's not reality. That's our brand voice. So I want you to think about, who are you, right? So the impact, if you do define your brand voice, your emails will sound like they're coming from you, even if you don't write them at some point now or in the future. You'll attract more ideal clients, and you'll have fewer unsubscribes and unfollows because you're the same all the way through. Your posts sound like your freebie, and the emails all sound alike, and everything is a congruent journey. And you have this tribe and community who are not so vastly different. They're all very, very much the same. And somebody may come to you a little bit more quiet, but may have this awakening where they're like, yes, this is exactly what I need. And nobody's ever spoken to me like that, or gotten behind me and my benefits or what I need like that. That's, a way you want people to feel when you define your brand. Okay. Show notes for today will be at fitnessmarketingmastery.com/define your brand voice. I hope this has been helpful. And I also hope that you really go through. So if you are listening, somehow walking, doing a workout, and you're listening to this podcast, go back just to the point where I've asked you the questions, starting with, what does your brand stand for? And push pause and answer that out loud or on paper. Or record your voice on your phone, because we can all do that so easily. And next, play the next one. What do you stand for? And do it so you actually go through it. And anything that trips you up a little bit that you don't have an answer for, put that up on a wall somewhere in your office, on your computer, or in your room, and keep coming back to it. And so you really drill this down. And I would love to hear from you if you use this. And for those of you that are feeling like there are so many of us, are, putting the words menopause, a menopause fitness specialist, menopause weight loss coach, menopause health coach, and the titles are acquired much, much faster than the knowledge required to carry out those titles. Defining your brand voice is one way to step way ahead of the game and get out of your comfort level, which may be the very thing you're complaining about. It's because You're standing against the wall waiting for one of the boys to walk from the other side of the room to ask you to dance. You have to get away from the wall, Wallflower. You have to get out there and into the game. All right. What are you waiting for? The world needs us right now more than ever. And never more a strong voice, one that stands out. Don't just add to the pollution. Be a voice.